Welcome back to the Getting Lucky Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm your host, Lucky Robert Curtis. Part 1, we covered the Ultimate Fighter finale for the Smashes show in the Gold Coast, Australia. We did that with Tom, English Tom. Check that one out. For Part 2, we're going to cover the Ultimate Fighter 16 finale, Nelson versus Mitrione. And to help us do that, we're bringing back the Professor of Pain, the Master of MMA Math, Marcus Mitchell. Welcome back to the show, Mitchell.
Thank you. It is good to be here.
This show was held at the Hard Rock Cafe. I'm not sure if that's what it's Hard Rock something in Vegas. And, of course, Goldberg mentioned Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses about 1 billion times, even though they haven't been relevant in over 20 years. The venue was really small. There were only 2,500 people. It felt like they were kind of playing in a bar.
It really did. It looked like almost people were having dinner while they were watching fights, like a comedy club or something.
Yeah, I think they opened with a comedian, a local comedian. The gate was just over 300,000. Now, an interesting thing here is that normally they load these TUF cards with fighters that didn't make the finale. And in the last few seasons, fighters have been saying, during the show, don't worry, we'll make it onto the finale. Well, on this particular card, the only 2 TUF fighters that made it onto the card were actually the finalists, and there was a little bit of bitching and moaning from other fighters about that. What'd you think?
I always did think it was weird that no matter how you do throughout the season, you still do make it onto the finale regardless, and generally you still get a contract either way. So I'm actually happy that it ended up like this, and they can whine all they want.
Yeah, they need to earn it the hard way. I do like how Dana would always, whenever he would hear people saying that, it's like secretly like, well, just fight on the finale, don't worry. How he'd say, don't take anything for granted. Well, now you know. Dana doesn't play around. There was a fight that was supposed to be on this card that at the last minute was canceled, and there was a little bit of drama regarding it. That was Melvin Guillard meant to fight Jamie Varner. Now, before we talk about this, let's hear what Melvin Guillard had to say. He actually had some pretty interesting things.
I think what he done tonight was very cowardly. I saw the look in his eyes at weigh-ins. I can tell he didn't want to fight me. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to sit here and bash the guy. I have a level of respect for him as a person, but as a fighter, I lost all respect for him as a fighter.
Well, there you go. Melvin Guillard does not believe Varner was that sick, even though he was throwing up, according to Joe Rogan, throwing up and trying to convince the commission, let me fight. That's the picture that Joe Rogan painted. I've heard that this fight's going to be put back on UFC 155. What do you think?
Yeah, I was upset when it was taken off. I was actually confused, and I had to get online to see, but it's going to be put back on 155, and when Varner pulled out, apparently Guillard said that Varner will never get the chance to fight him again, and then a reporter said, you're going to be fighting him in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Dana said you're going to be fighting him. Okay, I guess I'll be fighting him.
Right. What are you going to do now? I mean, I was really excited about it. It's going to be a stand-up war unless Varner's smart about it, but good on Varner for still wanting to fight.
This really hurt the card, because this was... I mean, I know that the big boys taking swings at each other is exciting for the casual fan, but this was the premier fight on the card, Guillard versus Varner. And when that got taken off, it really became, the main card became the undercard of a pay-per-view to me.
Yeah, this and the main event, I thought were going to be tremendous. The main event did pull through, but I was really looking forward to this fight. This was kind of like the Hector Lombard-Pal Harris fight from the Brazil card, or the Smashes card.
Let's just do a quick run-through on the prelims. We don't have a lot of time, so we can talk about them if you want. Tim Elliott got a unanimous decision over Jared Papazan. He's not Papa John's Pizza. Every time I say that's what I want to say. Mike Rios subbed John Coffer in 3. Hugo Viana got a KO in the first round over Ruben Duran. TJ Waldberger subbed Nick Catone in the second. Ruston Khabilov, a beautiful triple suplex KO over one of my favorites, Vince Pichel. Brutal Johnny Bedford, a.k.a. the Meth Head, KO'd Marcos Vinicius in the second, and Mike Pyle TKO'd James Head in the first. Any one of those fights stand out to you?
Absolutely. The Vince Pichel getting dropped on his head.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
He was from hell, and it was like Khabilov wanted to put him back. And that fight was awesome. I can't wait to see him fight again. Usually when you see people going up for a suplex, it's kind of like, well, they're the same weight and it's going to be difficult to pick them up, and you just don't see that anymore. And the way he was able to do it with no problem and put him on his head, I really thought not only was Patel out, but I thought he was seriously injured, so I was happy to see him get up. I also liked the Mike Pyle fight, with him coming back from withstanding a beatdown and then coming back and getting the win. I enjoyed that as well.
Now, regarding the suplexes, he, through his translator, revealed at the end of the interview that one of his friends said, "Hey, try to suplex this guy," and he goes, "Yeah, I will do it." And that's such a high-caliber wrestler that when he came in against Vince Pichel, who's a striker, he was basically just pulling tricks out of his bag. I'm sure he could have grapevined him or done any other sort of moves that wrestlers do to, noobs.
Mm-hmm.
When you suplex a guy 3 times in the first 3 minutes of a fight, you're toying with him.
He could have had his way. And I guess
really
he did.
He did. It'll be interesting to see what Vince says about this. But there were things I thought he could do, like wrap his legs so he couldn't be pulled back, all kinds of things. But from a grappling standpoint, this was a really, really tough matchup for Vince. Because Rustam Khabilov, you didn't really get a sense for who he was, but then in the first 30 seconds of the fight, you're like, oh, this is going to go badly.
I think, I'm not sure what he could have done differently other than quit continually letting him have your back. That would have been number one.
I don't think he could have won the fight, but he could have definitely avoided those 3 suplexes.
I guess maybe after he withstood the first 2, he was like, well, I guess I can do that again.
I like the Johnny Bedford win. Whenever you see tough contestants from different seasons, particularly from different countries, competing against each other, I feel like it's like crossovers. Like, hey, look, there's T.J. Hooker and the Law and Order. It's like exciting. Like, ooh, how could they be in the same multiverse? But clearly, Marcos Vinicius did not belong in the ring with brutal Johnny Bedford. I really like Bedford. He looks like an extra for Breaking Bad, but I really like him as a fighter.
Yeah, he put on a good performance. I was impressed.
And shame on Mike Pyle for coming and fighting with that atrocious mullet.
Well, I think he was bested by Roy Nelson's.
Well, let's face it. Roy Nelson has an epic mullet. Joe Lozon was tweeting out his girlfriend's comments, and she said about Roy Nelson, and hey, in 20 years he can be Santa Claus. That redneck Santa Claus. That's great. All right, so let's go to the first fight on the main card. This was Dustin Poirier versus Jonathan Brookins, and he got a first-round Darce choke. You and I both thought that this fight would heavily favor Dustin Poirier. But Joe Rogan seemed to be really impressed, at least initially, with Jonathan Brookins' stand-up. How did you think of how he did on his feet?
Well, if you recall from the last show, I thought Brookins' stand-up was atrocious, and it was a wonder that he's even a professional fighter with stand-up like that. And he came out there and nearly got the KO on Poirier. So I wasn't, having veins popping out of my neck like Rogan about it, but I was really surprised. And I was also surprised that not only was he able to have that success, but that he was able to have that success against Dustin Poirier.
See, I wasn't as impressed. I think the only thing that Brookins showed was that he had a better jab. Because you watch in the exchanges when Poirier is on the cage, all of this technique that Brookins is supposedly added to his game went out the window, and they were just winging at each other. Now, the difference was Poirier was covering and throwing. He did get clipped, but when you watch Brookins is standing there trading with his head straight up.
Yeah, I did notice that, and I think Rogan commented on that a couple times. His chin was out there for the taking, and he, to his credit, he did get hit on it a number of times, but he didn't go down. Him actually striking was great, but he's got to work on putting that chin down. And I mean, like you said, the jab is what looked great, but sometimes that's all you need to develop a much better striking game. When
you get into flurries or you go to finish, you just become, like Mongo. I don't know. I wasn't that impressed with Brookins. I thought his jab looked a little bit cleaner. He definitely had a little bit of pop on it. Are you surprised that him, with the pedigree of submissions that he's got caught in a Darce?
It did surprise me, but not as much. Like maybe if he was going against a lesser opponent, but Poirier's known for his subs, so
particularly that
he should have known it was coming. He should have. Darce is one of those ones where it's like, okay, he's got to do 3 different things to get me in it. He's already done 2 of them. I better protect. And that was surprising that he let him get him caught in such an obvious choke, but Poirier is a beast.
He must have been stunned.
Yeah.
So, I guess, what do you see coming up next for Poirier? Is he ready for a top 5 or top 10?
Yeah, I think he's ready to move up to higher competition, top 5 at least. I think he's ready to put his name back up there on his hunt for Aldo.
I think maybe top 10, maybe like the 10th guy, because he did get in trouble with Brookins, and then Brookins fell apart, sort of in his exuberance to get the finish. So Dustin Poirier is young enough that I think if the UFC's smart, like they did with John Jones, they can sort of nurse him along a bit more. About Brookins, do you think Brookins is a better fit in a smaller organization?
I think he needs to take a step back. His time in the TUF House, I wasn't all that impressed with him. I know a lot of people were, but I do think he needs to take a step down, maybe get a little bit more training under him and come back.
I think so too. I was impressed with him in the TUF House. It's just his striking, particularly his striking defense, which will be something that I readdress when we get to the main fight, is terrible.
He needs to put his chin. He needs to protect his chin.
Yeah, he needs to tuck his chin. I don't understand why that's hard to do.
No, the one place you don't want to get hit, and he's putting it out there.
It almost seems like you're untrainable if you can't just learn to tuck your chin. Like just go through the entire camp holding a tennis ball with your chin and you keep your head down. I don't understand why he can't make that adjustment. Let's go to the next fight. Pat Barry gets a brilliant, beautiful, spectacular, highlight-worthy KO in the second round over fellow striker, Muay Thai guy, Shane Del Rosario. I think there were two narratives to this fight. And the first one was that Kim Winslow sucks as a referee.
She's terrible.
If Johnny Bedford is an extra in Breaking Bad, she's actually the crack hoe helping Jesse Pinkman. She looks terrible. She looks like, I mean, it's not nice to say this, but she's a terrible referee. Thus, she forfeits any right for me to not make fun of her ghastly appearance. In the first round, early, Shane Del Rosario went for a takedown, and Barry grabbed the fence. And it actually stopped the takedown.
Yeah, I noticed that.
No warning, nothing. Now, Del Rosario got a takedown at the end of the round, immediately took the back, and then started fighting for the rear naked choke. Had he gotten that takedown early in the round like he was supposed to, he may have actually subbed Barry before he gassed, which is the second narrative. That irritates the shit out of me.
I think that the grabbing the fence, and it's not just Kim Winslow, even though she is atrocious. And while we're on her, there was a really hilarious tweet.
I'm not on her.
Well, nobody wants to be, I don't think. But during the Colton Smith fight, which we'll get to in a little bit, Ulysses Gomez tweeted out that it was surprising to see Kim Winslow's son win the Ultimate Fighter, because Colton Smith really looks like her offspring. But anyway, I think that, yeah, the holding on to the cage, that doesn't get called enough, and it's not when it does get called, it's not as severe, because it can be a game-changing thing to protect yourself from a stand-up. And I mean, you can speculate all you want. Yeah, he could have subbed Barry. I mean, Barry's ground game's terrible, but she's got to get better, or she's got to lose her job, and you can say that about a lot of us.
If someone grabs the fence and it prevents the takedown, what should happen? I mean, like, if someone pokes you in the eye, you get 5 minutes to recover. And if someone does it again, they lose a point. If someone grabs the fence and intentionally prevents a takedown, which is scoring in the eyes of the judges, should they lose a point if it's egregious?
I think I think that is the way to get it taken care of and have fighters. I mean, it's natural instinct to want to grab the fence to not go down, but I think something that severe would do it. But do I want to see that implemented? Not really, because wrestlers already dominate enough. So I just don't want to see that be another plus for wrestlers.
But it's not a plus for wrestlers. It's just ensuring that the strikers don't cheat.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, do wrestlers get to bring in a shield? Okay, I'm going to hold my shield up.
Yeah.
That's not. So anyway, the second round comes around, and clearly Del Rosario is absolutely gassed. Can't even, his hands get low. Pat Barry throws a punch. He doesn't react to it, gets clipped, and then starts sort of wandering backwards in a daze. Pat Barry, you can see in his head, he's thinking, check Congo, check Congo.
Yeah.
and he doesn't. He's worried about rushing in. Finally, he rushes in. Bing, bada, boom.
I think you could see it. You could see it on the instant replay when he threw that overhand left, I believe it was, and he connected. He just stood there and stared, and then was like, "Oh my God, I did hurt him!" And then he rushed in.
Yeah, it's like from Rocky IV. You see, he's not a machine. He rushes in, and the final punch that got him, he punched right through Rosario's guard, his defensive striking guard. His hands were up, and the way that his head twisted around, I'm sure he'll be seeing a chiropractor for the next 6 months. That looked really nasty. There
was got to be some whiplash from that. He could have seen the entire ceiling of that arena.
Yeah. He pulled an exorcist. His head was bent a pretty funny direction. After the fight, Pat Barry was extremely emotional. Here, let's hear what he had to say.
I don't know. There's a lot of no matter what we tend to do, there's always going to be the negative comments out there, but we all know the truth. People can say I'm too small, but sometimes after I punch in the head, people say I'm too big. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here for a second. I'm a force to be reckoned with.
So Pat Barry, he is 5'11", and he's fighting guys that are routinely 6'3", 6'4". Rosario is 6'4". He doesn't belong at this weight, even though he thinks that this win over Shane Del Rosario justifies him being there. Do you think it does?
I think it's not important what I think. I think he thinks that he fits there. If you notice, right after he knocked him out, I don't think the camera was supposed to catch it, but he kept saying to his corner, "I'm too small. I'm not big enough. I'm not big enough." And he thinks he is, and that's fine. His record's now 8-5. I like to see him fight. I don't think he's got any potential ever holding that strap.
No, he doesn't. And he doesn't at light heavyweight either. But It'd be a lot more fun to see a trimmed-down Barry fight Shogun and people like that. He doesn't belong in this division of giants.
No, I would love to see him fight the top light heavyweights. I'd even like to see him fight John Jones and try, because Pat Barry's not the kind of guy that's going to be scared to rush somebody.
If Pat Barry landed a leg kick, one of his leg kicks on John Jones' little chicken legs, he might snap it in half. We've seen it happen before with other fighters.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the TUF finale. Army Ranger Colton Smith versus Canadian, a.k.a. Communist, Mike Ricci. This was an obvious narrative on the part of the announcers. Oh, all-American versus the foreigner.
How annoying was it to hear Mike Goldberg repeatedly refer to Randy Couture when he was talking about Colton Smith? Even when it didn't have anything to do with what Colton Smith was doing, he kept going back to, he's grinding it out, just like the All-American Randy Couture. You can sit there and try to advertise it to me all you want, but Colton Smith, is not now and will not be Randy Couture.
His style doesn't mimic Randy Couture either. Randy Couture was a cage fighter. Like he would wrestle, he would use his Greco against the cage. Colton Smith swarmed more like Fitch, I think.
Yeah, a lot more like Fitch. He wanted to take him down, and he wanted to put a hurting on him. A lot of people were bored by the fight. How did you feel about that?
I actually was really impressed. Colton Smith has an amazing gas tank.
Right.
Amazing. Now listen, it's fun in training to kick pads, and to punch the bag and to do all the jiu-jitsu stuff. To get cardio like that at that level is pain. That is just suffering.
And Ricci
it's not running 5 miles. It's not running 10 miles. It is killing yourself with the very worst exercises invented to man. And Colton Smith has that level of cardio. Just that as an exhibition alone was impressive. And Mike Ricci, he maybe won 30 seconds of that fight.
Yeah. There are obviously portions of the fight game where Ricci's better. He's maybe more technical in the stand-up and all that. But Colton Smith, he took him down when he wanted to. And I read a lot of different things where even professionals were bored with Colton Smith's wrestling. And generally, I'm the first person to hop on the lay and pray bandwagon. But I did not see lay and pray from him. I saw take him down, beat him up, and genuinely try to hurt him. And I'm fine with that. If it goes to decision, it goes to decision. But he was working the entire time to hurt Ricci.
Was it the level of domination of John Fitch over Eric Silva? No. Just because I don't think Colton Smith has those sorts of tools in his bag yet.
Right.
But what I did like was that he was hyper aggressive in implementing his game plan. He came in within 10 seconds and went for the shot and got him down. Now, he didn't do a lot on top of him. He tried, but I don't think he's that great with submissions. I don't think he's that great with striking. The kid only has 4 fights, although the UFC is starting to they're padding records by amateur fights. They did it with Toquinho really bad.
They said that Colton Smith was 7-1,
something like that.
I found that he was 3-1
professional fights. Yeah, he had 4. He has 4 fights. And to completely disprove my statistic, Colton Smith, the fighter with fewer fights, beat the fighter with more fights, like I said on the preview show. But as we did see with the Australia show, both fighters with more fights won there. But my second rule, which I didn't mention, is if you have to bet on the wrestler.
Always
because those are the guys. Always bet on the wrestler. Rashad beat a much bigger Brad Imes in his season. Always bet on the wrestler. He completely overwhelmed Mike Ricci. Mike Ricci, though, apparently is really supposed to be a lightweight.
Well, they both said they're both supposed to be lightweights. And I can see Colton Smith definitely being a lightweight. I thought Ricci looked fine as a welterweight.
Fighting aside, hats off to Colton Smith. I like grinders. I make no bones about it. I'm a very rare MMA fan where I can appreciate the artistry.
I can appreciate it, but I hate it.
Of a John Fitch, of a Colton Smith. Did it piss you off when Colton Smith wasn't listening to the Harley Davidson guy about to give him a $20,000 motorcycle?
I don't understand where his mind was. I mean, sure, the most awesome thing that ever happened to him just happened, but have some respect.
He's like pointing at people in the crowd. Hey!
Yeah.
At that point, I started thinking of him as being Forrest Gump level smart.
Did you see the look on Dana's face?
Oh, Dana wanted to whack him upside the head with the TUF trophy.
He wanted to run the motorcycle over him.
It's like, dude, one of our major sponsors is about to give you $20,000 worth of hardware. Shut the fuck up and let him give you the keys to the freaking motorcycle. Sorry, that pissed me off. What an idiot. Let's go to the main fight.
All right. Well, I did want to say about, since this is amazing insight by my part about their looks. If you recall, we talked about their looks. Mike Ricci trains with Rory McDonald, and Mike Ricci is little Rory McDonald in his style. It was pretty funny to see somebody look so similar to him be dominated, unlike you'd ever see Rory McDonald dominated.
He kind of looks like a cross between Topher Grace and the guy that played Spider-Man in the old series. What's his name?
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire. He kind of looks like a cross between those two. There's an actor that he looks exactly like, and I haven't put my finger on it yet. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.
Ricci?
Yeah, Ricci. Ricci. Let's talk about the main card. We didn't think that this fight would amount to much. Roy Nelson basically has every advantage over Mitrione, and we were right. It ended in a first-round TKO. Now, I have something to say, and I'm just going to jump in and cut you off. When you bring in a natural athlete into mixed martial arts, and they don't have anything that they're good at, they're just an athlete, here's something that they inevitably struggle with. And we saw this throughout Brock Lesnar's career. Mitrione looked good striking. He looked good. His kicks look good. His punches look good. Now, here's what's tough, and here's what's not human. This is something you have to learn to do. When someone's attacking you and flurrying you, keeping your composure while you're being struck is probably the most difficult thing to do in striking. Now, when Roy Nelson surged, Mitrione, when he was retreating, panicked. And by panic, he'd put his arms up, and he would flinch, and that's what got him caught by that uppercut.
Yeah.
His striking looked good, but his striking defense looked very, very bad.
Comparing him to Brock Lesnar, I really like that comparison. Lesnar turtled up. Mitrione, to his credit, didn't do that, but it was clear that he didn't want to get hit, and this is a sport where...
He was flailing.
Yeah, this is a sport where you have to be okay with getting hit. And you have to have some type of defense to stop it. He didn't look like he had it, and when you're going against a Roy Nelson, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you get yourself ready for that? I mean, it's clear where his career is going. That's what he wants to do at this stage of his career, so... For him to not be prepared in that area.
I don't think Mitrione can do anything to get prepared for that. He's 34. the people that have this the level of composure you need to be a professional fighter have been striking and doing this stuff for years. You know what I mean?
Yes.
These guys like Anderson Silva never gets knocked out, and one of the reasons they say is obviously he's got a good chin, but he never misses a punch, and that's because he's looking, and he'll take a punch and roll with it because he's got that level of composure. Now, no one else has that level of calm in the midst of a storm.
No.
But that's just the hyper extreme example. Mitrione doesn't have that, and at 34 he'll never have that.
He can't develop that at this stage.
No. And he'll always just be a guy that is sort of average. Put him up against other sort of, I don't know, these fringe heavyweights like a Brendan Schaub, and he'll look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, even against Chet Congo, he looked bad. I mean, Chet Congo's the worst striker that's a striker that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'd like to see Mitrione go against a Schaub or a Pat Barry. I'd like to see him go against Pat Barry and maybe develop, even though I don't think he can, some type of defense. But how fun would it be to see Pat Barry put a leg kick or a head kick on him? I'd like to see that.
If Pat Barry could put a head kick on Mitrione, that would be impressive.
I got to tell you, though, Mitrione's, you alluded to it, Mitrione's leg kicks, or kicks in general, looked fantastic. And
they did.
Within a minute of the fight, you could see the mark it had left on Roy Nelson's right shoulder. So I think maybe that was part of his game plan, to kick him in his power arm to weaken it a little bit. But he didn't have time for that to develop before he went out.
Yeah, he needs, like, Boss Rutan had a great interview where he said, you just start throwing little pitter-patter punches at a fighter, and you start going faster and harder, and as soon as they start blinking, you stop and start again. And that's how you get people sort of used to this, the violence coming your way without flinching and without quivering and hiding and flailing. Let's talk about the bonuses. Sub of the season was John Manley, $25,000. KO of the season, Mike Ricci, a nice consolation prize for losing. Fight of the season, Colton Smith versus Eddie Ellis. Sub of the night, TJ Waldberger. He got the second round submission over Nick Cantone. Knockout of the night was Pat Barry. And fight of the night was Tim Elliott versus Jared Papazan, or Papa John's, as I like to say. You have any problem with any of those?
I disagree with the knockout of the night because I was so impressed by Khalilov. That just came out of nowhere. I also really enjoyed the Darce choke that Poirier put on, but I'm not gonna go against Wahlberger. But I was very disappointed to see Khalilov not get the money there.
Yeah, I think there weren't a lot of good fights. So I have a problem with fighting that. I think Rustam Khalilov should have gotten a KO of the night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times people are like Goldberg and Rogan were both saying they've never seen that.
Yeah.
Daniel Severn suplexed a guy 4 or 5 times, but he didn't knock him out.
No. He put him
so I think that's worthy. I think that's definitely worthy. What are your final thoughts on the card or the season, TUF 16?
For the card, I think that it was just I think the main theme throughout it was fun fights, but not very serious contenders. You had Pat Barry, who you like to see fight. You have Del Rosario, who I'd like to see take lower competition and come back. But nobody who I really think is going to vie for a title aside from Dustin Poirier. As far as the season goes, like I said earlier on the other show, I wish that they would go back to the live format. I enjoyed that a lot more.
This card reminded me of the old Strikeforce cards in that the competition was completely uneven and it ended up with a lot of finishes.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting to watch, but Roy Nelson versus Mitrione, I mean that's not even. Or someone with Rustam Khabilov's wrestling pedigree, which I didn't realize he had until I saw him against Vince Bichelle. That's not a very fair match. So you got lots of really exciting finishes, but the balance of competition not very good. And as a result, you ended up with 2 decisions out of
2 decisions, right?
Out of 11 fights. I don't know if that's a record, but that's a hell of a lot of people getting subbed and knocked out.
It may be a record for a UFC show, but for a Strikeforce show, that was pretty much normal.
Par for the course.
Yeah, but I think this card also was, at least the main event was devastated by Carwin dropping out.
Yeah, definitely. And the Melvin Guillard, Jamie Varner thing.
Oh, my
that
goodness.
definitely hurt the card.
I can't wait to see that fight.
Now, I will say, for what the card was, it was exciting. It was fun to watch. And the last 3 cards, this Tough Smashes finale and the UFC on Fox 5, we've really had a nice string of exciting fights. They did have a poll during the show about who the fans wanted to see TUF go back to, which international show, and they said TUF Mexico was the winner. I think at like nearly 60%.
Oh wow!
Is that something you're interested in? You're gonna get a lot of boxers.
Yeah, I think that's what would come out of Mexico. I can't think of very many standout kickboxers or obviously wrestlers or anything from Mexico, but it would be great to see a particular weight class filled with some boxers from Mexico. Do you have any idea what weight class, or just said?
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be the smaller fighters. It'd be interesting. This would be some drama for the Hispanic communities. You get Mexican Americans, aka the Norte or Chicano, versus the Mexicans.
Oh.
And see, I bet there would be some bad blood there, even though it's sort of painted as a very happy community to the outsiders.
I wonder how many of them will be tattooed with brown pride.
Probably in Spanish. What is? I don't know. I don't speak Spanish. I could tell you what. No
that is. Idea.
TUF 17 starts in January. Chael Sonnen versus John Jones. That, I bet you, will be a great season. Chael Sonnen, despite his antics, is a great commentator. He's actually likable. I think this season will completely destroy any shred of likability John Jones has.
I don't think there is any left, and you're right. If there is, it's gone. And Chael Sonnen's going to rip them apart. The only thing is, I'm kind of hoping for a similar end to that season as there was to this season, with one of the main event fighters, Chael Sonnen, going down and maybe being replaced, but by a better fighter like possibly Hendo.
I don't.
Do you really want to see Bones versus Chael Sonnen?
Bones doesn't. There's no one there to challenge Bones. If it's not Chael, it's going to be a 67-year-old Dan Henderson. It doesn't matter. Whoever's going to be put in there is going to get beat. Anyway, that's TUF 17. That's TUF 16. The card. We'll be back later this week. There's not an event until UFC 155, I believe, December 28th, 29th, right around there, depending on if you're in the USA or Australia. We'll still be doing 2 shows a week. We'll bring back English Tom and Mitchell, and we'll talk about various things. We've got a lot of exciting ideas coming up. We've got some interviews in the works. Be sure to check us out on whatculture.com. Also, look for us on MMAshare.com, the global network of fans. Look for me on Twitter at Mr. Lucky Rob. And subscribe to us on iTunes. Mitch, you want to say goodbye to the people?
Thank you for having me. I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
And not in that fashion. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.